Hello, my sewing friends. I'm Jen, and this is Friday Sews. And Friday Sews is when we talk about sewing in life. So click on the hashtag, find all kinds of people who do it, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any of mine. Sewing. That's normally what I talk about first, but I have no sewing to talk to you about because my sewing room is kind of a disastrous wreck. And most of it is in the living room and entryway. It's a mess. You can kind of get a little bit of a feel for what it looks like here. Uh, it's just boxes and boxes and containers and bags and all kinds of things. So I'm working on moving that back in. And the reason it's out there is because one of the first rules of organizing and redoing a space is that you take everything out of the space before you put it back in. And as you put it back in, you weed through and you redesign and kind of do that. And my sewing room, it's kind of like moving the furniture. I get bored with it and then I think, well, this would work better. So I do that. So that's what I'm doing. Again, I've redone this room probably four or five, well, probably four times in the last, 5 years, something like that. What I will tell you about is what I have been doing, and that is, first of all, I screwed wheels onto the bottom of my flexi spot table, which is going to be my cutting table, so I can push it up under the window and then move it out to the center of the room when I want to cut something out or I need more room or space to get around the table, things like that. And in the meantime, I had it's a Kallax unit, and it is the kind that is 2 boxes wide by 4 boxes high. And I had turned it on its side, put wheels on the bottom, and so I want to use that, but I knew it was taking up too much space to use it the way it was. So I flipped it up and I took the wheels off and I decided that I wanted to fill all the holes. Now, I didn't have to fill the holes. It was no big deal. It's not like this is fine furniture. This is an IKEA Kallax unit, really. So I decided I was going to do that. And honestly, I think what I was doing was compensating for being so overwhelmed and not wanting to deal with it because I would come out to the living room where everything has been moved and think, oh, I don't want to deal with that. So I decided, okay, I would fill these holes. So yesterday I spackled the holes and then sanded them, and then I was vacuuming registers. Now, this is something we say around my house. Now, there is a story behind that, and I want to tell you. The story goes like this. When my husband and I had 3 of our 5 children, we had outgrown our house. And so we knew we needed to buy a new one. And so we found a foreclosure and we called it the HUD house. HUD is the Housing and Urban Development area of the government that handles the mortgages on things like that. I don't know. It's just a foreclosure. So this was the perfect house for us. This was huge and had a basement. It was wonderful. It was right across the street from the church where my husband worked. And so it was perfect. So we put an offer on it and somebody beat us out for the price. And so we were really disappointed. But, I'm thinking, okay, well, then that means there's a better house out there. So we go looking for other houses, but every single house we would walk into, my husband would go, well, it's okay, but it's not the HUD house. And I'm looking at him and going, honey, we didn't get the HUD house. We need to move. Our house, in the meantime, had sold. We've got to move. We need to find a house. You need to get over this HUD house thing. And so he said, yeah, but gosh, it was just nobody's moving in. Nothing has been happening. It's been probably 3 or 4 weeks. And I thought, so I called the realtor and I said, listen, I know you probably never do this, but could you call and check on the status of that sale? She said, well, I don't ever do that, but okay, I can call. So she called and then she calls me back and says, you're not going to believe this. The seller couldn't get the financing. And I said, you're kidding me. No way. So of course I told my husband and he said, we need to check as soon as that goes back on the market and we need to put in a bid that's, we're going to get. And we ended up getting it. Okay, all of that to say, there were a lot of things that needed to be done to that house. So, in the midst of that, one evening, I knew I had to get the kids back to the place that we were staying to put them to bed. And so I told my husband, listen, this has to be done, and this has to be done, and this has to be done before the people come tomorrow to do, I can't even remember whatever thing it was. And he said, okay. So I left him with tasks to accomplish. So he came back, and I think I saw him later that night. And I said, did you get everything done? He goes, well, no. And I said, why? What do you mean that you didn't get it done? These people are coming tomorrow. These things needed to be done. Are you kidding me? He goes, well, I wanted to vacuum out all the registers because, it's been a while that the house has been sitting. And he gave me all these excuses. And I'm like, you were vacuuming registers when you should have been doing this other thing. Are you kidding? So that has been the big joke and the big, thing we say when we are doing something when we just want to avoid doing the thing that we ought to be doing. Yeah, vacuuming registers. So that's what I was doing yesterday. I just did not want to deal with that room. And I knew I had to because nobody else was going to deal with it. And I needed to get it done. So I went in and I spackled and I fussed over what to fill the holes with. And I went and got some stuff I found on YouTube, and then that really didn't work as well as the spackling did. So anyway, I did that. And then so today I went in and I immediately thought, no more vacuuming registers today. No, we're not doing that. It's funny when you have conversations with yourself at times and you just have to sit yourself down and go, okay, listen, this needs to get done. So I did. I removed the wheels. I spot painted all the places where I'd spackled and sanded, and I flipped it upright like it's supposed to go. And then I needed to put the wheels on the flexi spot table. So I did that, and I moved a bunch of boxes in because I'm going to put them into the Kallax unit that I have now stood up on end. That's going to be a process. And I'm actually kind of anxious to do it because I think I can rearrange a lot of this stuff so that it makes a whole lot more sense and it's not just things that are thrown into random places. It really is a balancing act when you have a big sewing studio, isn't it? When you've accumulated all of these things. And man, I go through all the time and I'm paring down and getting rid of and weeding out, and still I have so much. So that is all the sewing slash non-sewing. As for life, I am headed up on Tuesday to go see my number 3 daughter. She lives in Atlanta, and so I'm going to drive up there, and my oldest daughter is going to drive down from Virginia, and the three of us are going to kind of fix a few things and stage number three's house because she's selling it and she's going to move, hopefully to Florida. She lived here for a good long while and then moved because she bought her house. And now she said, I think that phase of my life is done. I'm just going to do something else. And I think that is such a great attitude. She always has had that kind of a philosophy of life. So that's life. Now I'm going to move on into a little bit of Jesus. So if that is where you check out, thank you so much for coming, and I will see you next time. So, a little bit of Jesus. I have been watching Become New, which is a YouTube channel that is a daily devotional that John Ortberg does. And he's one of my favorite authors and speakers. He started a new series a couple of days ago. And he's talking about not letting your heart be troubled. Well, my heart has been very troubled in these past months. And it's just been a challenge to face that and get through that and pray about that and deal with that. My family has a lot of drama going on. And the wonderful thing is we are working through it, that we are actively pursuing good relationships. It's just that that's really hard when you've got drama. So this whole don't let your heart be troubled thing is really speaking to me. And today, Ortberg drew a parallel with that verse in John 14, where he says, let not your heart be troubled. You are trusting God, now trust in me. And he goes on and he gets a little bit of pushback from a couple of the disciples. Thomas says, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? We don't know where you're going. And then Philip says, how, what are you talking about? We don't know the way. Ortberg drew this parallel to Micah and the verse that I love, that I always say, do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And that is the same thing. The Israelites there are saying, look, what do we have to do? Does God want this and this and this and this? And you know what? I've been in that place in my life before where I've thought that there's some, list that God has, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've got to do these things and then I'll be happy with you. And that's not, that is laughable. I look back on the time when I was so upset and I thought that. It was many years ago. But I learned there is no list. There is no requirement, you know, thing. All he wants is for us to love him, do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with him. We know where we're going. We know how to get there. It's not hard. Jesus puts it pretty plainly in John 14. So that really spoke to me today. And it was good to remember that when, I'm always praying, God, please make me humble because I know you are opposed to the proud. So in these relationships within my family, please make me humble. Please. And show me how you want me to deal with these things, the things that I should say, the things I should not say. Please help me deal with all my emotion and get that dealt with before I go to talk about it with my family members. Let kind of some of the upset kind of settle down before I go talking to them. Sometimes that takes me a while and they get impatient with that, but it's worth it. So do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. I really, truly do want to do that every day, and I hope you do too. That's Friday Sews for this week. So I hope you'll come back. And, I love you all. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.